If you haven't realized it's Mock Draft Monday yet, you haven't been paying attention. We've got another mock draft here for you on the channel like usual. This one with trades, which should be fun because I've not really done a lot of these yet. We are almost into April. It's officially draft month by the time you're watching this video for a lot of you guys, and it's super exciting. Of course, I will be live like I am every single year for the NFL draft. Live analysis, reactions, explanations, everything to do with that. But today we have trades, and I really thought about the Titans trading away this pick for a while. In the end, I decided I think it's more likely they probably hold on to this pick and go with Cam Ward. If they think he can be their quarterback of the future, I don't think they're going to pass that up in order to accumulate extra draft picks. You know, a lot of teams could want to move up for this. Maybe the Giants want to move up, trading multiple picks, and we'll talk more about the Giants when we get to them regarding a potential trade up. But in the end, I decided that Tennessee will probably end up holding on to this pick. I don't know that the Browns are going to be offering enough or even wanting to move up. I don't know about the Giants. So the Titans stick and pick and go with their QB of the future, Cam Ward. Browns at number 2. This is a tough call. It's one of 3 players, in my opinion, in likelihood, probably being closer to a 50-50 with Abdul Carter and Shedeur Sanders. I know a 50-50 doesn't work with 3 players, by the way, but I'm saying I think those are pretty much the 2 options. And then Travis Hunter, maybe outside shot, just because he's such a talented player. I don't want to completely eliminate the possibility. I do think it's possible. I think Carter and Sanders are a lot more likely. You have quarterback at the top of the pyramid. It's the most valuable position in the sport, no doubt. Offensive tackle and edge rusher are number 2 and 3. Or in that second tier, at least, right? So you can take a really, really valuable position here and a really good player. Travis Hunter's a freak player. I just don't know that he's more likely than either of those two. But at the end of the day here, I have to decide, do I think Shedeur Sanders is worth the 2nd overall pick? I think he may be the best day 1 quarterback in this draft. He's accurate. He has some other things that you maybe wish were a little bit better, right? It's not top tier athleticism. It's not top tier arm talent, but he's very accurate, right? And you think playing behind a better offensive line, which is not saying much compared to what he played behind at Colorado, that his play could even be elevated more. I do think he's going to be one of these quarterbacks, though, that needs a group around him to be successful. And I don't know that that's necessarily a player you take at number 1 or number 2 overall, even if he may be the best day 1 QB. It's not a very good QB class. So in the end, I have decided on Abdul Carter here. Shedeur Sanders very much in play. I know Deshaun Watson's not the answer at quarterback. I know Kenny Pickett is not the answer at quarterback for Cleveland. I just don't know that they think Shedeur Sanders is. And when you have some other quarterbacks that maybe are not necessarily that far, do you take one at 2, or do you say, hey, we can grab one at the top of the 2nd round or into the 3rd round? Maybe it's a Jalen Milroe, who is raw and bad right now. He's a great athlete, but he's not a very good quarterback. But he's got tools that you can develop, and we know teams and coaches like traits, and they see the bigger picture. They see the vision of, okay, this is what this player can become if everything goes right, and it often doesn't, right? But that's what these teams see. Would you rather have Shedeur Sanders at 2, or arguably the best player in the draft, plus a developable Jalen Milroe at 34, or Will Howard later on, Jackson Dart? I'm not saying that Jalen Milroe at 34 is a home run pick, or wherever the Browns are picking, right? But to me, I think there's going to be a number of teams, maybe including the Giants, that say, all right, I don't see a quarterback necessarily at 2 or 3, but maybe we're going to take one to develop in the 2nd or 3rd round, somewhere on day 2, maybe early day 3. If we don't love the guy at number 2 or 3 anyway, we'll just take a guy that we also don't really love down the board. I think that's a possibility. So Abdul Carter, arguably the best player in the draft. You get a running mate on the other side of Myles Garrett. That's a pretty formidable edge duo as we get to the Giants. And it's the same type of conversation, right? And to me, it really ends up being the same answer. I don't know that the Giants are going to be sold on Shedeur Sanders. And I've tweeted this out, and I stand by it. I believe it. I do not think the addition of Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston change your odds of drafting a quarterback in this draft at all. I do think it potentially impacts whether or not the Giants would trade up to number 1. Quarterback is still a need for the Giants, even with the addition of Russell Wilson for just 2025 and Jameis Winston as a backup for 2025 and 2026. I just don't know that the Giants would feel forced to move up for a guy at that point, because you have quarterback solved for 2025 at least. Even though Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston's not the best, you can do worse for a quarterback room, but it's not great, right? You still could take one at 3, but with Brian Daboll and with Joe Schoen probably coaching for their jobs and managing for their jobs in the case of GM Joe Schoen, this is your chance. You've got a quarterback that can win you games. Russell Wilson can be an 8-win type of QB potentially, right? Try to put the best pieces around him to be successful, build up the rest of this team in what is clearly a contract type year for Shane, for Daboll. You've got to win now or you're going to get fired. Does a developmental second or third string quarterback at this point help you do that? I don't think it does. I don't think that means they won't take a QB in this draft in general. I feel less convinced that it will be at 3. I think, again, they might do what I talked about with the Browns. Take one on day 2 somewhere, somebody that you can develop long term. And in terms of who's the most exciting developmental prospect, I really do think it is Jalen Milroe. He's got a rocket arm. He's incredibly athletic. He's missing everything else. I'm not gonna lie. But if all of these guys are not incredible prospects, who could potentially end up being the best when they might all bust anyway? I think it could be Jalen Milroe. There is a world, it might be a 1% chance, right? But his 1% chance of being a superstar, you still have the chance at a superstar. I don't know how many other guys you can say that for in this draft. Anyway, I'm going Travis Hunter at number 3. He's arguably the best player in the draft. The Giants need help at receiver. They still need help at corner, even with the addition of Paulson Adebo. Hunter is a tremendous addition to this team as we get to the Patriots at 4. I think this is a trade down spot. I think it's Ben. I think the Patriots are looking to upgrade that offensive line. But who would a team be moving up for? I'm getting a little bit crazy. And I'm having the Chicago Bears trade up from number 10 to number 4. Now, they've got picks to move. They have Carolina's second-round pick, so they might feel like they're playing with house money a little bit. You bring in Ben Johnson. You make a ton of trades and signings in the offseason. You revamp the offensive line. Braxton Jones could be good enough to stick at left tackle. You have Darnell Wright at left tackle. You traded for Jonah Jackson. Injuries are a concern, I get it, but right guard. You signed Drew Dahlman at center. You traded for All-Pro Joe Thuney at left guard. You can get a little bit crazier here and continue to build up that offense. You don't need to just stay stagnant. You can potentially make a big move up, and it's hard to think of a bigger move than moving up for arguably the best player in this draft. He's in that top tier. He is a running back, but we are making a move here for Ashton Jeanty. Again, the trade details, you can think that it matters here. We're just trying to get a trade done. In reality, there are typically picks being swapped. It wouldn't just be 10 and 41 for 4, most likely. It'd probably be 10, 41, 233 for 217, plus maybe a 3 or a 5 next year. It'd be a bunch of different chaos, but at the end of the day, I am going to have the Bears move up here, and I know people really care about the trade details in this make-believe trade. It's really more about the idea of a team trading up. You never know exactly what the return's going to be. Again, you could refer to maybe the Jimmy Johnson trade value chart. That's a possibility. But in the end here, for me, what matters is just the team moving up, a team that's motivated maybe to move up, and why a team might be moving back. For the Patriots, still have a lot of holes on that roster. They spent a lot of money in free agency. They had to. And they spent a lot of money to bring in some guys that make that team better, but it's still, in my opinion, good to accumulate draft picks, get better, younger talent in there. And are you taking an offensive lineman at 4? You feel a little bit better about it at maybe number 10 with this class. The Bears make a gigantic move up for Ashton Jeanty. He's a tremendous prospect. He's got some of the best contact balance I've ever seen for a running back. I mean, truly, he's an incredible player. And the Bears, could really use that in their offense. You've got receivers, you've got an offensive line, you've hopefully got your quarterback of the future in Caleb Williams, and now you bring in a bell cow, monster, big play running back that can catch out of the backfield as well. Ben Johnson coming in, knows what a running back can do for an offense. You look at Jahmyr Gibbs, you look at David Montgomery. You know what a really talented running back, or even a couple, can do for an offense. Genty, I think, checks off a lot of boxes. I think the Bears are ready to make a big-time move. I think Ryan Poles at GM is ready to make a big move. We've seen some big moves in the past. We've seen some big trades. This would be another Genty to Chicago. They worry about potentially the Raiders pulling the trigger, maybe the Saints, maybe somebody else. Don't let it happen. Make a move up, Genty to Chicago. Jags at 8. They've got a new GM. Some think it's me. That's an interesting one, but I'm not James Gladstone. I've said it again. I'll say it again. He could be potentially looking to move down here. It's often Mason Graham for me at number 5, but, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be. Maybe the first-year GM wants to get some more picks, get more of his guys in the building, and I think a trade down is often fairly safe, and you have kind of the blue-chip players off the board now. Mason Graham, obviously, at 5 would make a lot of sense, but maybe the value isn't there at number 5. Maybe you just want to accumulate some extra picks, but who would be moving up? Well, I think a team potentially like the Carolina Panthers, maybe with Genty off the board, afraid of the Raiders taking Teteroa McMillan. We know the Panthers want a big-bodied X-style receiver, and that's what Teteroa McMillan is. I think they may be motivated to go make a move. They have some picks. They have the Rams' second-rounder. They've got future picks they could potentially move in here as well. They're not moving up a tremendous ways, but they could think that they're finishing off the offense here with the addition of T-Mac. So we are going to make a move happen with the Jaguars that, again, could be motivated to move back for similar reasons with the Patriots. And for the Panthers, we can add in number 74, maybe a 3 next year. And then the Jags could give back like 126. Again, the details are not super insanely important. Hopefully I'm doing a decent job here. Just in my head, compensation with the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, which is kind of like the league standard. And we will have Teteroa McMillan going to the Panthers, who have moved up and swapped with Jacksonville. And the board really can't have fallen very much worse for the Raiders at this point, because you have Genty off the board, you have T-Mac off the board, you have the blue chip players off the board. You went out, you traded for Geno Smith to be your quarterback, but is he your long-term guaranteed answer at the position? I like Geno, but with Shedeur Sanders available at number 6, I do think there's a chance the Raiders consider that. There are a lot of other ways they can go. I would be the first to say that Mason Graham would make sense. Potentially a corner like Jahdae Barron or Will Johnson would make sense at this pick. Doesn't really feel like there's a receiver or running back in range. Obviously, you're really not going to be considering a tight end here. Maybe Walter Nolan's in play if you want to continue to build that interior defensive line. I think Shedeur just kind of makes the most sense. He's a great backup right away. I think even though Geno's got a little bit more overall arm talent, I think Shedeur Sanders has some similarities to Geno Smith. And I think that's a great guy to learn under, right? And Shedeur Sanders could end up being your QB of the future. You look at, what the Packers did with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers, and that certainly seems to have made a lot of sense now. Jordan Love is a pretty good player, and obviously the Packers did it before with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, and now we've seen the Falcons do a similar thing with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. I think having a quarterback, even making a move for a quarterback in the offseason, doesn't guarantee that you're not going to try and set your team up for the future. You have a fairly new GM in there, Tom Telesco with the Raiders. I think his first year was last year with the Raiders. Before that was the GM of the Chargers, of course. Shedeur Sanders could be your QB of the future. You don't have to make a move up at all. He falls into your lap at number 6. With no T-Mac, with no Genty, maybe you pull the trigger on Sanders. At number 7, got the Jets going with Armand Membu, one of my favorite players in the class. I think he'd be a starter at right tackle right away. I could talk about this one for a while, but I think it's pretty cut and dry. He's arguably the best offensive lineman of the draft, and you get him at number 7. That's a good spot. He has the potential to play guard, but he's got the ability, the athleticism, the size overall to stick at tackle. Long enough arms, certainly, as Will Campbell's been quite a topic of discussion here lately. But Armand Membu ends up being the pick at number 7. Jags at number 8. Well, I hate to do it to you again, Jags fans. Probably getting bored of Mason Graham over and over and over again. But I think you're happier with him at 8 than you were maybe at 5. And he's still maybe one of the best 5 players in this draft at a position of need. And I keep going back here with the Jaguars. And I keep going back to that James Gladstone. Again, not me. Keep going back to that James Gladstone quote talking about, you know, the additions in the offseason. They've kind of added more to the offensive line, receiver. They've made some moves, right? But, you know, when asked today, hey, you guys didn't really do much to improve what is thought to be a fairly poor interior defensive line. It's like, well, you got to have somewhere for the rookies to play. I'm paraphrasing there and kind of piecing things together, but that was essentially what I took away from it. I just think Mason Graham is a monster player, and it is a great fit in Jacksonville. It's tough for me to not take him when he's available there with the Jags. I really think it ends up being just a match made in heaven. Saints at number 9. I'm going to go Jalen Walker here. I think there's a pretty good chance he ends up being a top 10 pick. And the Saints here moving to an attacking 3-4 defense under Brandon Staley. Jalen Walker's got that ability in spades. I think it's a perfect role for him. Play 3-4 outside linebacker. Rush the passer a decent bit of the time. Still, you can spot drop. You can QB spy. Jalen Walker, very, very good player. And still developing, sure, no question. But the upside is immense. And teams draft on traits. Walker, tremendous athlete. Good fit into the defense. And arguably the best player available. At number 10, we have the Patriots after a trade down. Will Campbell kind of has fallen into your lap. You may have considered him at 4, and you get him at 10. We know the offensive line still needs work. Campbell's got a chance to stick at left tackle even with shorter arms. He showed the ability to play tackle at a high level in the SEC. There's a chance he can do it in the NFL even with below average arm length standards or well below average. If not, he can move inside to play guard, and you're going to have a pretty good guard. He's so technically sound. He's so powerful. He's so athletic in general. That's why I feel that he has a chance to take a tackle. So athletic. Mauler at times. This is not just a finesse player because he has shorter arms. He is a mauler. Really good athlete. Patriots get him at 10. Try him at left tackle. If it doesn't work, you've got a starting caliber, potentially even more than that, maybe Pro Bowl caliber guard. 49ers at 11. Thought on this for a while. And to me, I think Walter Nolan's going to end up going fairly high in this draft. If it's true that he is interviewed well and teams really are not worried about any type of maturity, I think he's going to end up going high. The potential for him as a pass rusher is immense, and that's what teams value and covet. On the interior defensive line, there are a lot of guys that can stop the run. Fill gaps, whether you're a 1-gapper or 2-gapper, right? Obviously, the value is going to change. But there are a lot of guys that can stop the run. There are a lot of guys that can play 0 or 1 technique. Just because they're heavy, they can be in the way, hold the point of attack. How many guys are there that can really rush the passer from the interior? Walter Nolan's one of those guys. He profiles to be at his top end. Again, like his, maybe not even his 1% like we talked about with Milrow, but his top end, he projects to be one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league. He's that level of athlete. He is that type of potential as a player. And in this draft, there are not that many of those guys. Walter Nolan, I think, could end up going quite high. You look at what the 49ers currently have with their interior defensive line. Their defensive line in general, I guess, but especially the interior, it's really bad. Walter Nolan, I think, makes a ton of sense at 11 as the Niners try to improve their trenches. I also think it's a potential trade down team. But again, it's not about who's trading down. Who would be moving up and for who at this point? For whom? Got the Niners sticking and picking. Cowboys at 12. I'm going to go with the Texas Longhorn. Hook 'em. Matthew Golden. Would hate to see him go to the Cowboys as a Giants fan. Again, growing up in New Jersey, big Giants fan, but a lot of my Texas family made me a Texas fan from a very early age. I know it's an interesting combo, but it makes it not really a great fit when you have guys staying in state to play for the Cowboys potentially. Matthew Golden to Dallas. Really good route runner. Tested really well at the combine, of course, but fantastic hands. I think he's got really good potential. And I don't think he's just going to be a slot guy because he's maybe slightly undersized. He's someone that can play the Z. I don't know that he's your prototypical X, but he's got such great ability. He's not a slot guy. I would not call him a slot guy. 6 foot, 195. He could definitely produce in the slot, but you got CeeDee Lamb to do that a little bit, right? Sometimes you just put your best receiver in there, and then Golden can move around, be an impact-type player for a team that needs more impact players, really on both sides of the ball, but especially offense. Dolphins at 13. It doesn't necessarily have to be O-line here. You've got Campbell off the board. You've got Membu off the board. I think it could end up being something in the secondary, and if you're going to go for best player available, how about back-to-back Texas Longhorns, throwing the horns up, hook 'em. Jahdae Barron is an incredible player. He is undersized for a boundary, but has shown the ability to play on the boundary in the SEC, even though Texas was like heavy zone this year. He's athletic enough, I think, to stick in man coverage, but I think his best role is in the nickel, and I think that position is starting to get more and more valued. You see what Brian Branch has been able to do with Detroit. You see the impact Cooper DeJean made, and I know those guys are not going high in the draft, but maybe that's finally starting to change. I think Barron is such an incredible player around the ball. Put him in the slot. Let him feast on screens. We know the offense is kind of moving that direction, or moving in that direction at the NFL level. If teams are running more 2-eye, how do you take advantage of the safety being back? Well, run more screens, run the football a little bit more. Barron's the guy that can single-handedly ruin plays like that, playing from the nickel. He can stick with these slot receivers. He's just such a tremendous player. I've got Texas bias, but he's an incredible star. Won the Thorpe Award, of course, this past season for best defensive back in college football. Absolute stud. Colts at 14. Again, like the Jags, it's going to be the same chalk pick that I always make, but it's tough to find a better fit. Tyler Warren to the Colts at 14. I think when you think about the way Chris Ballard likes to draft, it's often really, really good athletes, right? Colston Loveland in play for that reason. Nicky Manwari in play for that reason. Shamar Stewart, Mykal Williams even maybe, right? Mike Green. These guys all in play. If you want to improve the defensive side of the ball, I totally get it, right? But I still think you've got to build around your quarterback. There are questions about whether or not that will be Anthony Richardson. No doubt, I get it. Give him every chance to succeed, and that means putting more pieces around him. They've got a big hole at tight end. Warren is a top 10 player in this draft, comfortably, maybe even higher than that, depending on who you talk to. I think Zerline's got him as like a top 5 player. Daniel Jeremiah, I think, has him as a top 5 player. This is a tremendous player in this draft. I know he's not Brock Bowers. He's a different style of player, but that's got tremendous value. At 6'6", 260, can block a little bit, but especially can make an impact as a receiver. I mean, he was a wildcat quarterback at times. He's a big red zone threat. He's a fun fit into this offense. I love it. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And this is just, it's not a broken fit. It's a great selection here for the Colts. Falcons at 15. I don't think there's a real reason to move off of this pick with Will Johnson available. You could certainly stand to improve corner. Johnson's, again, arguably one of these top 5 or 10 best players in this draft. He is an absolute stud, right? And for a Falcons team that has shown that they have no desire to actually improve the pass rush, well, they're not going to do it again. Sorry, Terry Fontenot. You need to improve the front 7. But here they opt to do what they always do, and that's not do that. Will Johnson at 15. Very good player, by the way, so I don't hate the pick, but this is what I think they could do, even with guys like Jahad Campbell to play linebacker or even edge. Mike Green off the edge, Pierce off the edge, Ezaraku off the edge. You could even consider interior defensive linemen here with guys like Kenneth Grant or Derek Harmon, of course. Cardinals at 16, going with another Longhorn. It's Hook'em, Kelvin Banks Jr. They could play at tackle or guard. I think the Cardinals have long-term needs at both. If you look at their offensive line, how many names can you really point to outside of Paris Johnson Jr. that you want on this team in 2 or 3 years as a starter, right? I think offensive line is a huge need. It's just which direction do the Cardinals want to go? And in the end, I think it's the guy that could play tackle or potentially move inside the guard. There's a thought, right, that Gray Zabel could end up being like a top 16, top 18 type pick. Here's the thing for me is I think Gray Zabel ultimately ends up being a center. Chance he could play guard, of course, as well. He's never going to be a tackle. But I think he's a center. And if you look at how centers are drafted historically, it's not high. Typically, over the past decade plus, the highest drafted we've seen a center is about 18. And so I need to follow trends a little bit in that way. And it would be tough for me, even for a team that could use a center, right? It's tough for me to think that one is going to end up going top 16 or 17 or even top 20. It's tough to get those guys in there. For me, I love Kelvin Banks Jr. He is one of the best linemen in this draft. And I think he could fill a multitude of needs there for Arizona, depending on what they want to end up doing, which remains to be seen. I think it'll be Kelvin Banks today. Maybe I'll change my decision tomorrow. 17, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. Board really has fallen great for them. They've got Malachi Starks available, Jahad Campbell available, all of the top edge rushers really, including Shamar Stewart. Where did the Bengals go? Well, in a class rich with defensive line talent, I'm actually going to go a different direction. I'm going with the uber athletic Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina. I've had this fit a little earlier in the year. I don't mind it. You look in the back end, they could absolutely use a player like Nick Emmanwori. Now, could he be a good strong safety? Absolutely. But could he make a huge impact in the box, in the slot? I think absolutely. He is a tremendous athlete, obviously, but he's not just an athlete. He has unbelievable ball skills. He's got a nose for the football. He's got great ability to carry routes down the field, as I always say. I love Nick Emmanwori as a player. I think he's going to be a first-round pick, even at a maybe less valuable safety spot. But I think you still feel good about the way the board's going to fall to you in the second round if you're the Bengals. There will be really good edge rushers and interior defensive linemen available in the second and in the third round. You don't necessarily need to go that direction at 17. There may not be a player like Nick Emmanwori available. Be an awesome chess piece to deploy for new DC Al Golden coming over from Notre Dame. Yes, there's the thought that they're going to hope Xavier Watts gets there and he gets to stay in the same system and just insert into the starting lineup in round 2. He may not get there. You may prefer Emmanwori. He ends up being the pick at 17. Yes, over all the incredible players in the front 7, it's what I'm doing today. Seahawks at 18. Well, there's some really good players here, especially off the edge. And it's easy to say, okay, trade down spot for Seattle. They like to trade down. They don't like to take interior offensive linemen very high in this draft, yet they need them. They've got a lot of picks. Got a lot of picks here. You could accumulate more. I don't hate it ever, right? But I also think with all these really good edge rushers available, they may just opt to take one of those. And you look at which type they historically prefer, it's these longer, heavier guys like Mykel Williams, like Shamar Stewart over in Ezraku, Pierce Jr. Green type, where these guys are like hovering around 250. Williams and Stewart are 265 plus, right? Or 260 plus at least. For Seattle, I think it ultimately ends up being one of those guys. And Shamar Stewart ends up being the selection today. The cat hates it, if you can hear that from the other room. Thought I should address the interior offensive line. And I should, probably. But I don't think John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, is going to go that direction. Absolutely could, because it's such a glaring need. I totally get that. Maybe this is Gray Zabel. Maybe this is Josh Simmons at tackle. And you worry about the ability of Abe Lucas to stay healthy, right? But we're going to go Shamar Stewart today. It is a type that I think Seattle will like. He's not 290 anymore. He's closer to like 270, but is a freak athlete off the edge. Seattle historically has not really cared very much about production. It's more about potential. It's more about traits. I think Stewart's a really good fit in Seattle. Tampa Bay at 19. Well, I had Mike Green going there earlier, and I feel like it's going to be one of the edge rushers. Tampa loves production. They love production. And you've got three extremely productive edge rushers here. Mike Green, James Pierce, Donovan Ezaraku. I'm going to go Mike Green. I really do think he's a great player. A little bit undersized maybe, shorter arms, but a tremendous athlete with, I mean, really great explosiveness off the edge, great overall hand usage, and the way he wins as a rusher is to do with that athleticism and the hands. I don't know that he's necessarily, even though we saw him do it to Josh Connerly at the Senior Bowl, I don't know that he's going to be a guy that needs to get his hands into you to be effective. He's someone that flashes a great ghost move, which is where you flash the hands, pull away, and then as soon as you get the tackle to flash their hand, you've got that inside path to rip up and get around the arc there to the quarterback. I think Green is a stud-type player. I think he's going to be a good fit here in Tampa. That brought in Hassan Reddick. I think Mike Green's a player that profiles fairly well to Hassan Reddick. So Mike Green ends up being the pick. Denver at 20. I do this every time, but how can I stop? They bring in Evan Ingram. Does that stop them from taking Colston Loveland? I don't know that it does. You can still run 12 personnel. Evan Ingram's a guy that will miss games every year. He's hurt, it seems like. At least certainly was with the Giants. I think a little bit with Jacksonville as well. So can't necessarily rely on him to stay healthy on a shorter-term deal. You get Colston Loveland for 4 years on the rookie deal plus the fifth-year option for first-round picks. That's in play. Running back feels like it's in play with Amarian Hampton or Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins. I love this running back group. Dude, if you need a running back in this draft, it's hard for me to pick my favorite because I can say so many nice things about all of them. Hampton, Scadaboo, Judkins, Sampson, Johnson, Henderson. I like all these guys. DJ Gittins is fantastic. Harvey is a little bit undersized, but has been very productive. Devin Neal's a good mid-round guy. Damian Martinez somewhere on day 3. Blue's a great receiving back, hook 'em horns, with tremendous speed. Bashal Tootin, tremendous speed. And then, I mean, Brashard Smith, kind of hybrid running back type receiver with home run type potential. Jarquez Hunter is a yards after contact machine. ETN's tape was great. I was shocked because I didn't feel like he made a huge impact when actually watching Georgia and before that Florida, but he was actually really solid, patient, powerful. Marcus Yarns has great receiving ability. Taj Brooks, highly productive and tested way better than expected. Ollie Gordon a couple of years ago was the best running back in college football, arguably. Look, Quinn Allen from Syracuse is an awesome mid-round target. Jaquavius Marks has great hands out of the backfield, one of the best receiving backs in this draft. Rocket Sanders a few years ago is incredible. Donovan Edwards tested very well and has great receiving ability and was better a couple of years ago at Michigan. Woody Marks is a fun late-round target. Former Texas Longhorn Jaquinnen Jackson was awesome at Utah. I mean, this running back class, I like all of these guys. There isn't really a running back I don't like. I didn't even touch on Kyle Monangai there, but he's great. I mean, this running back class is otherworldly. Do you need to take one at 20? I don't know. Anyway, all that to say, I'm just going to go Colston Loveland again, probably. Probably am. I don't know. He's a great option. I think he will start in some capacity. You look at like the way Buffalo had Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid working in there. I think you could see a similar thing with Sean Payton in Denver. He likes to utilize his tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. He might be looking for one of these receiving backs on day 2, potentially. It doesn't necessarily have to be Hampton at 20. It could be Henderson in round 2, or even, I mean, Johnson in round 2, Giddens in round 2, Jaden Blue in round 2, or 3 or 4, right? You know, wherever it ends up being. This running back class is fantastic. Steelers at 21. Steelers are tough. I mean, do I just go Jackson Dart again? I didn't have that. I had Kenneth Grant here earlier. And I do think that's a good fit for Pittsburgh. But yeah, I just don't know who's playing quarterback. If Dart has a chance to go first round, this is the spot where he's going to go, in my opinion. And the Steelers grabbing 21. I'm not a huge Jackson Dart guy. That's not to say that he's not going to develop into being a starting caliber quarterback, but it's tough when I've just got the tape to go off of, right? And I see a guy that's, okay, he's a decent athlete with an average arm that is definitely late on every throw in a really, really not NFL-style offense at all. You're not just typically going to see an NFL offense run like double deep post the entire game. and just take shots over the top. And he's just not on time, and his decision making at the end of games is not good. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. He's got an incredible throw against Duke in the bowl game. I love that play. It was an amazing play. I see what Jackson Dart could be, right? If he's doing that regularly. He's not. I don't know. Steelers do need someone to play quarterback. It's Jackson Dart. I'm not going to say that he can't develop into being a starting caliber quarterback. I mean, Brock Purdy was phenomenal with the Niners, right? And he was the last pick of the draft. If you look at Brock Purdy's college tape, myself and every other GM apparently included thought Brock Purdy pretty much sucked. It wasn't deserving of the first 250 picks in that draft. And he ends up being a quarterback that might end up making $50 million a year here in the near future. So it's tough to say, right? We don't know. But I was not overwhelmed with the film. We'll see what ends up happening. Chargers at 22. I like Gray Zabel here as a fit, but instead I am going to have a move happening, and that's going to be a team trading up. And I think the Texans are a team that make a lot of sense here. They trade away Laramie Tunsil. They bring in a bunch of extra picks. And I look at the Chargers as a team that could definitely be okay with moving back a couple of spots with some really good edge rushers still on the board. Still some really good interior offensive linemen on the board they could consider. They're not really going to be in the market for a tackle, and I think that's what the Texans would be moving up for. Josh Simmons here at 22, that's what we're going to do. And I don't think it would cost a tremendous amount to move up. It could be 89, and maybe the Chargers give 158. They have a ton of picks. Could be something like this. Maybe the Chargers even get an extra one, like 236 or something, right? And that trade ends up going through. We have the Texans at 22. You trade away Laramie Tunsil. Simmons has great potential to be a starting caliber offensive tackle here. I feel like he ends up being a great pick for the Texans at 22. You have to give a little bit to get him, but the fact that he's available at 22 has true starter potential coming back from an injury, or else he's probably not here. So I like Simmons, and I think he's got, again, starter potential. And for the Texans, I think you can play Blake Fisher at left or right tackle, whatever you want to do. It's going to be left tackle, it seems like, with Titus Howard stepping in at right tackle. Simmons is not forced to play right away. I also think there's a chance he can end up playing guard. He's a really, really good athlete. Movement skills are fantastic, but I think he's going to end up profiling best as a tackle long term. But he's a really, really fun player as we get to the Packers at 23, and I'm about to do the most Packers thing ever. And that is going to be taking I'm sorry in advance. You're not going to like it. But this is, I think, what the Packers could do. Brian Gutekunst. Goody could come in and just take the developmental, big-bodied SEC edge rusher, and that's Mykel Williams. Listen, you might like other things more, and I would. Like Jahad Campbell, potentially, right, is in play. We know they like to take these linebackers, and Jahad Campbell has got some versatility, and that's maybe why you like Quay Walker a few years ago. You know they would look for a receiver one. Luther Burden's here. Who knows if he's going to end up being a first-round pick with some of the character stuff that's been talked about lately. And it's nothing bad, just other than like typical diva-type receiver personality, supposedly. But I like that at receiver. Those are the guys that are good. I'll take a Terrell Owens on my team. Yeah, it might destroy the locker room, but he's going to put up 1,500 yards. Anyway, whatever. Randy Moss is a Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion. Or did he not win a Super Bowl, actually? No, he maybe, did he? With the Patriots? They lost in 2007 to the Giants. Hell yeah. Did they win a Super Bowl with him on the team after that? I don't know. I kind of don't think so. And he was on that Niners Super Bowl team that lost to the Ravens, right? He may not have been, but he was on the Niners at some point around there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's a Hall of Famer. Anyway, whatever. Vikings at 24. Malachi Starks is a fantastic pick here. I don't know. It's weird because this is an obvious selection to me. It really, really is. But the Vikings don't have any picks in this draft. 24, 97, 139, and 187. They've got no picks. And that is a tough, tough position to be in. They've got no selections. So Can you really stick and pick here? I think it's just it's a tough player to turn down is where I'm going to end up being on that. Malachi Starks is a plug-and-play starting free safety. He lost one in the offseason. Starks, to me, is a top 10 player in this draft. I love him as a player. His 2023 film is phenomenal. 2024 was a bit worse, but he's playing so many different roles. He's got great ball skills. Everyone talks about his leadership, his character, his work ethic. I think this is a guy that will end up being a first-round pick, even at a lesser valued position at the back end of a defense. He's a great, great player. Tested more than well enough. Chargers, after a trade down at 25, well, got some good edge rushers still available. And you got some good interior defensive linemen still available. I'm going to go with, even though Kenneth Grant would make a lot of sense here, pairing him up with Jim Harbaugh, today I'm going to go with Donovan Ezeraku. Getting something off the edge. Highly productive. They put up like 18 and a half sacks at BC this past year. Something, I mean, absolutely ridiculous. He's a great player, and I think a great fit here for the Chargers at 25. Rams at 26. Boom. Plug and play. Automatic. Jihad Campbell. They need help at linebacker in the biggest way. I think Campbell ends up going way higher than this. In this particular mock draft, he ended up falling, sliding down the board. Sometimes that happens, especially for a lesser valued position. What I think makes the difference for Campbell and why he ultimately ends up going higher than this is the ability to rush the passer off the edge. He's not just a typical like modern day linebacker, 230 pounds. He's good in coverage. Can he really play in between the tackles? Can he really shed blocks? This is a guy that's 6'3", I think 235 at the combine. Listed obviously at 245 and could put on some more weight to rush off the edge, but you don't really need him for that here. The Rams get someone that is a really, really good athlete that can play in between the tackles, can play and take on offensive linemen, but also drop into coverage. He's really athletic, and he's got a good feel for zone coverage for a guy that really hasn't been doing it for that long. I love Jihad Campbell as a player. I mean, I think Daniel Jeremiah in the video we broke down in my last upload or two ago had him at number 9. To get him here at number 26 is fantastic, and I don't think you hesitate. At 27, we have a team that always seems to trade down or just take a monster that falls to them. It is the Baltimore Ravens. And would the Ravens really trade with the Chiefs here? I mean, you get all these teams that are competing for a Super Bowl, you'd think at the bottom here. But I think a team like the Chiefs could consider a slight move up. They have Tennessee's number 66. I think the Ravens are always comfortable getting more draft picks and trading down. I don't know that would be an absolute fortune to trade up here. Maybe it's, you add in Tennessee's 66 for 91. Maybe, something like that. Either way, Chiefs move up, and there's a lot of talented interior defensive linemen on the board. I'm going to go with an interior offensive lineman. Gray Zabel. There's a thought he could end up going a lot higher than this, but you trade away Joe Thuney in the offseason. You've got Trey Smith playing under the franchise tag. Is Kingsley Suamataia ready to step in and be a starting guard for this team? Gray Zabel, I think, definitely has the ability to. And even if you like Kingsley Suamataia, Gray Zabel could step in for Trey Smith if you're not able to sign him to a long-term deal. I think at the time I record this, I'm pretty sure he has not been signed to a long-term extension. I think he's just on the franchise tag. I could be mistaken, but either way, Kingsley Suamataia could be upgraded here. So, Gray Zabel ends up being the selection. Lions at number 28. Gray Zabel would have been a great pick for them, and I think that's maybe why the Chiefs go and make a move. And they jump in front of the Lions, who now pivot to an edge rusher. We're going to go James Pierce Jr. again. They're going to love the production. Think he's got double-digit sack potential off the edge. James Pierce Jr. is a stud player. We'll see if he ends up going the first round for against supposed character issues, but Pierce Jr. is a freak, and the Lions get him at 28. Commanders at 29. Let's go with the running back, Amarion Hampton. Plug-and-play starter. He's got really, I don't want to say necessarily home run hitting potential, but he's close to that, right? I mean, this is a guy with pretty good speed, track background at UNC, good contact balance, just a really good overall back here. Commanders could use one, and he's kind of like an easy pick at number 29. Bills at 30. So many great interior defensive linemen still available. Why overthink this? We're going to go with Derek Harmon, someone that has been as productive as almost any of them. We're more productive, led the FBS in pressures for an interior defensive lineman this past season. It's an easy fit there for Buffalo at 30. Ravens at 31 after the trade down. Well, edge is a bit of a need, as is corner. And I think corner, with all of these guys available, absolutely in play. I'm going to go with the speedster, Maxwell Hairston. The tape is also good. This is a guy that's sticky in man coverage with 4.2 type speed. And guess what? They just took a guy like that last year. They still need help on the boundary. They still need a corner. Nate Wiggins, Maxwell Hairston on the outside. No one's running by those guys. That's 4.3 flat speed from both of them on a bad day. Maxwell Hairston's a really good player. You lose Brandon Stevens. You can never have enough corners. Hairston, Wiggins on the outside, Humphrey in the slot. That's a great secondary. Safety, still a need, I think, but so is corner. So is I guess, defensive line in general, but you can take that later. Hairston here at 31. And then we wrap things up with the Eagles at 32. A lot of great players still on the board. And that's the case with this draft, right? There's not, from everyone you talk to, this is not just me saying this, there's not a tremendous difference between 15 or 20 in this draft and 60, which I know is completely jarring. That sounds insane, but that seems to be the consensus from everyone that I've talked to. And when I've been watching a lot of these guys, I'm a little bit behind this year on the film study, but you know, it's tough to say that these guys are guaranteed first-round type players, first-round talents. There might only be, you know, close to 15 of those in this draft, 10 or 15. And I know that seems underwhelming. The draft has good depth, lacking a ton of top-end talent, but you can find starters, and we're going to end up going Kenneth Grant here to Philadelphia at 32. I'm trying to think about the way Howie Roseman would draft here, and it just seems build through the trenches. This is another huge interior defensive lineman to add to the fold. They obviously have had great success with Jalen Carter, and Milton Williams just got a huge payday. And you, of course, have a mountain of a man, another big-time Georgia defensive tackle in Jordan Davis alongside Jalen Carter. You lose Williams, you replace him with another mountain of a man, another freak athlete. Grant's closer to Davis, I would say, in terms of overall type than Milton Williams. But it never hurts to add another big-time body athlete into that interior defensive line rotation. That's the mock draft for today with trades. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I'm sure you will. And I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.